Alright, howdy y'all, this is Nick back with an update video. Now this video is going to be covering updates on two projects on this channel, the 66 Plymouth Fury and the 78 Chevy van. Now I'm going to start off with updates for the 78 Chevy van because of course it was the first project on the channel, first video for the channel, and apparently it was the most popular on the channel. So let's get into that. So 2016 I started working on it, and then 2017 I got it running and driving. I got it back on the road, and that was the last video I did on this van. And from there I just basically treated this van as a daily driver, and so I would drive it around, when either the Grand Prix or the Corsica was down. So I'd drive this thing around, and it did great all through the rest of 2017, rest of 2018, and then 2019 wasn't that a good year for this van. So I had just put new tires on it, and it was doing great, and just my luck happened to be that a few weeks later, after I got the tires, this van started leaking transmission fluid. And so, I didn't really make a big deal out of it. And I realized, well, I had just done a transmission fluid and filter change on it. And I just figured, well, maybe it's just the pan bolts, the transmission pan bolts are loose. So I went and tightened those down, and apparently it still kept leaking. And so then I realized, well, the transmission fluid isn't coming from the pan, it's coming from the bell housing. So now there's a more serious problem with the transmission, and basically I have to pull it and possibly rebuild it. And so I don't know exactly what's wrong up there. I just, my basic theory is that there's a seal between the motor and the transmission. I don't know what it is because I haven't pulled a transmission before, but whatever seal it is, it's broken and it's causing a leak. But so pretty much from there, as it sat, transmission fluid just kept on leaking and leaking until there's nothing left in it. So that's basically the brief story of what's going on with this thing. But I can't work on this thing until I have the 66 Fury done and out of the way. So now we can get into the updates, and I basically will go over what I've done on this car and what it needs next. So the first thing I did on this car was rebuild the front suspension. I did upper control arms, lower control arms, sway bar, and strut rods. I sand blasted them, repainted them, and I replaced the upper ball joints, but I couldn't find any new lower ball joints, so I just used what I had. And I even did the steering knuckles too. Those are all repainted, so I did my best there. Even the bushings on the sway bar, replaced all those. So pretty much every piece of rubber on the front suspension has been replaced, and it's all rebuilt. So then after the front suspension, I moved on to the power steering system. Now the original power steering gear in this car had parts missing, and I didn't know the condition of it, and so I basically decided, well, I'm just going to get a new one, and it had a core on the old one, so I had to turn in the original one, which is a little bit of a kind of a pain for me because I wanted to keep as many original parts as possible, but it is what it is. I got a new gear, and I got all the other extra parts for it, all new lines. There's a hose missing, got that. Some other parts that didn't come with it. Got all that. I also got a new power steering pump, well, it's new to this car. It's not a brand new one. Found it on eBay for 70 bucks. Came off some other Mopar. I don't know exactly what it was, but I think it might be older than this car. But anyway, all I had to do was change a seal on it and it worked great. And it came with the pulley and everything. And so far power steering works great. You know, I also redid the center link for it. Got a brand new pitman arm and idler arm. New tie rod ends and sleeves and all that. So pretty much now, you know, the front suspension's rebuilt, power steering's rebuilt, and I also got a new radiator, which, you know, it turns out to be a Chinese radiator. I did keep the original one. The original one had a crack, but the radiator guy said he couldn't fix it. So I don't know what I'm going to do with that old one. But yeah, you know, it's got new hoses, new thermostat. Also had to replace the little metal cover that goes over the thermostat to connect the hose to. That was rotted out. So pretty much the cooling system's been rebuilt, technically, except the water pump. Then I moved on to brakes. I rebuilt the whole brake system. Front to back, new brake lines. The original front brake line ran in the front of the car, but we decided that it would be better running it along the firewall. Like a lot of later models, that's what they did. They ran the line along the firewall. So that worked out. And I don't know if y'all saw the first video I did on this car, but apparently someone before me had started a single to dual master cylinder upgrade, which I continued that, and so far it's great. I got a junction block, everything. I haven't tested it, but hopefully it works. You know, this car is originally power brakes, so it's got a new power brake booster also, and yeah. And then I also replaced the missing ignition switch, ignition lock cylinder. So now I at least have a key for it, and I can start it up more easy. And so yeah. Now the last thing I worked on here was the gas tank. Now you can see it's rough, it's not brand new. That's because when I started working on it, you know, I couldn't find a better tank to replace it with out of a junkyard. No junkyards had them. So basically I was stuck with restoring what I had. So apparently, you know, this car, of course, had been hit in the rear driver's side quarter. So not only did it bend the frame, but it also really dented the gas tank. So, well, crushed the gas tank basically. And we spent our time pulling all the dents out with just solder and a bolt and some wood and a nut and a wrench. And you just, you know, crank it down and pull it out. And I believe I have video of that. I don't know, but after this I'll probably work on some old video I hadn't uploaded and upload it. But yeah. So we pulled the dents out of it, and then we started finding lots of holes. Apparently the tank was rotting from the inside out. So then we just started filling the holes with solder and making patches for it, and we patched it all up. I put it back in, and then when we decided on starting it one day, we put gas in it, and so far it looked like it held great. And then about a week later, it started leaking again. And why was that? Because apparently this car was undercoated in, I guess, what you'd call Z-Bart. And the tank was covered in Z-Bart, and I didn't make sure to clean that. So there was a hole under the Z-Bart, and the gas ate through the Z-Bart, and it basically, that's why it leaked. So we had to drain it, and basically take it back out to take it back out, do the same thing, patch it, and I put it back in, and so far I haven't put any gas in it, and so I don't know if it's going to hold. Hopefully it holds this time, but you never know. So that might be a future issue again. But yeah, I also did find out later on that there is one company that makes a reproduction of this tank. Since 66 was an oddball year, this tank actually had oddball dimensions. So far, there's no other companies except this one company that makes a tank with those specific dimensions. So, you know, they make new tanks for 67 Furies, but those apparently are too long and they don't fit in 66 Furies. So that's what's going on there. Alright, so that's pretty much an overall wrap up of what I've done on this car. Now it's on to what this car needs, and it's very close to being back on the road soon. So I'm just going to start with what's on my head first. Is these rear wheel cylinders. I don't know why I didn't replace them a long time ago, but they need to be replaced, and I got new ones, and I'm going to be installing those soon to complete the brakes. And then the next thing is this driver's side front drum. Now, back when I first got this car, we didn't realize that the threads were different on either side. You had right-hand thread on the passenger side, and you had left-hand thread on the driver's side. So, there was a nut on this drum that wasn't coming off, and that's because I was turning it the wrong way. And so we thought it was seized, and so basically we're hacking at it until it finally came off and we were able to separate the wheel from the drum. And then we realized, well, shit, it was really left-hand thread. And what was crazy is I had taken this wheel off without even knowing it. I totally did not realize that I was unscrewing the nuts left-handedly. So it just, I don't know. But I actually got video of that, and that will be part of what I start uploading to catch up pretty much on where I left off with video on this Fury. And yeah, so anyway, that's the next thing. I got new left-hand studs for this drum because apparently I couldn't find a better conditioned drum with left-hand threads. So I found some new old stock left-hand thread studs, and I'm going to be putting those in, so then this drum should be good to go again. And yeah, because I mean, if I could make these right hand, but then it will mess with the rear axle, because this rear axle is left hand thread, so it's just better keep it all original than go on a tangent and mess with things that really shouldn't be messed with. So yeah, and then the next thing I got to do is the neutral safety switch wire. I have to rebuild that. I couldn't find any like original replacement. Apparently on the wiring harness end of the wire there's supposed to be a connector, but somebody hacked that off and then just tried, you know, twisting the wires together, didn't even solder them. It was completely ghetto, but I got all the materials for that coming, so I'll be putting that neutral safety switch wire back together, so at least I can start this car up now without having to have this lead here, you know, this white lead, you know, because it needs some kind of ground to work. So yeah, and then I also got tires that I got to take care of. Apparently some of those tires don't hold air, some of them do, I'm kind of on a budget, so I'm not going to go with full brand new tires. I'm going to try to find some used ones to, and basically just replace a couple with used ones and just make it work so that I can put this thing back on the ground again. But I also have to, before I ever put this thing back on the ground, I got to do some adjustments to the front suspension, and then it can come down. The ride height screws, I haven't adjusted those yet, so that will be the next thing. And then the steering gear nut, I didn't torque that down because I didn't have a socket for it. I gotta get a socket for that so I can torque that down, and then that will be good to go so far with suspension. And then one of the last things I'd be doing not only is putting the seat back in, of course, but rebuilding and adjusting this carburetor, because apparently this carburetor wasn't taking any fuel, even though the fuel was getting up there from the gas tank. There is a new fuel sender unit in that tank. It works. It's just that this carburetor is old and it doesn't really want to accept fuel, so I got a rebuild kit, and I'm going to be putting that back together with all new gaskets and stuff, so then and at least get it to idle so that I can start up like a normal car and idle and not die on me all the time. So yeah, and then pretty much after that, probably when I got this thing on the ground rolling, then the last things are fixing the horn wire, and there's a turn signal wire here that needs to be fixed. There's also a wire for the temperature sensor that really needs to be replaced. So I'm probably going to be working on that. And then also I got to get another set of headlights for the front, and I got some bulbs for all of the tail lights in the back. So all of these lights should be working. And then I also, of course, got to install my bumper. I don't know how it's gonna fit. Hopefully it fits somewhat decent. But yeah, it's kind of bent up there, but it might work. But yeah. So pretty much that's it for all it needs, and it should be back on the road. But there's a little bit of concern when I start driving it, how the compressions are going to do, because they are low, but it's also just because this motor hasn't, been running for a long time, and it might eventually get back up and maybe build up pressure again, but who knows, it might need a rebuild soon. And hopefully the transmission will be okay. So far all the fluids are holding, nothing's leaking, so it's pretty good. And then also, of course, the last things I got to do is get a title for this thing, because it never had a title, and then just work on AC and heat, fix that too, and then it should be good to go. And yeah, so that's pretty much all the updates I have on my van and my Fury. And I'll definitely be, uploading videos, more videos, even new videos on all the things I do to these cars. And I want to get these things finished here so that then I can drive them to my property and move into my property, so they're not a problem being here and being broken, and I just don't want that. I also found this battery over near a recycle place, and apparently it's a good battery. Apparently the recycle area over there, they don't actually recycle batteries, so someone just dumped it over there. So I took it, and so far it has a good charge on it. So we'll see how that goes. You know, I might have to get a new battery, but yeah, that's pretty much it. And then of course, once it comes out of the garage, it's going to need a power wash. And I already fixed one door, and I'll probably troubleshoot the other door to get that to open.